behavior. At the end of the day, you're making a huge mistake not to understand that a deal with Iran has to include their behavior. Why in the world would you want to allow them to have more money unless they change their behavior toward their neighbors?
The president has contrasted the nuclear deal with Iran with the military option. If opponents of this deal succeed in overriding his veto, does that mean the U.S. should be much more ready to use military force against Iran?
Yes. Here's what I would tell the Iranians. If you want a nuclear power program for peaceful purposes, you can have it. If you want a large enrichment program, you're not going to get it because we don't trust you. You've lied about your ambitions in the past. You've hidden nuclear facilities. I would tell the Iranians you can have a small enrichment program consistent with supplying the needs of one reactor for peaceful purposes. If you want any more than that, the answer is no. You're not going to get any sanctions relief until you stop destabilizing the region. No more weapons until you change your behavior. And if you try to break out and you don't like the construct and you try to get a nuclear weapon, then that will be a provocative act. If you want a war, you're going to lose it.
When you say of the negotiations, anybody could have done better, are you confident that as president, you could not just demand better, but you could get the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese, and the Europeans all to agree to a much tougher deal?
Yes. There's no way in hell I would agree to lift the arms embargo. That wasn't even on the table.
But what if the Russians said, we're not part of this deal in that case?
Well, that's fine. You know, we have a lot of power. The United States is either going to lead the world or somebody else will. If I'm president of the United States, we're going to reimpose sanctions until they change their behavior. And I'll tell every French and German company, if you do business with Iran, you're going to lose the ability to do business in America. I would stop this deal. I would tell our allies we're not going to go through with it on our part. You do whatever you like. America's not going to be part of empowering a radical Islamic regime with more money, more weapons, and create a nuclear arms race. We're not going down that road.
But if indeed a military option were required, wouldn't you need those very countries that you'd be telling to buzz off right there, to be part of an alliance, to do anything credible?
No, I think we could handle the Iranians alone if we had to, and they know that. I don't want a war with Iran, but let me tell you this. If they choose a military confrontation, and they'd have to choose, they will lose it. We have a lot of capability. They have an old Air Force, a small Navy. If the Ayatollah doesn't believe that the military option is seriously on the table, they're going to keep playing a game and keep playing a game. If I were president of the United States, I would give them choices. They could have a small program for peaceful purposes. With behavior changes, they could be part of the family of nations. Without that, they're not going to get more money. They're not going to get more weapons. And if they try to break out, we're going to have a military confrontation they will lose. If you're not that forceful, you're going to set the Mideast on fire. It already is on fire. This is gasoline on a fire.
It's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. To Senator Graham, thanks a lot for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on Morning Edition, Renee Montaigne speaks with California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, and here's her views on the Iran nuclear deal.
Scientists are announcing progress in fighting a dangerous parasite. Cryptosporidium parvum infects the gut and causes severe diarrhea. In parts of the developing world, it's the second leading cause of diarrheal disease, and you can get it by drinking contaminated water. Researchers have been working on better cures and a vaccine for the parasite, but the organism is difficult to study, and they haven't had much success. As part of his series, Joe's Big Idea, NPR's Joe Palca introduces us to a scientist whose work is promising to change all that.
For the most part, no one in this country dies from Cryptosporidium infection, but outbreaks do occur. In 1993, 400,000 people in Milwaukee were sickened when the parasite got into the city water system.
It was very unpleasant for a week or two, but then it's over.
That's Boris Streepin. He's a distinguished research professor at the University of Georgia in Athens. Streepin says it's a different story in the developing world.
Small children, especially small malnourished children, are very susceptible, and they can indeed have chronic disease and die from the disease as well.
A study of children in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia found Cryptosporidium was the second leading cause of diarrheal disease.
So why is it so difficult to study? Well, so The biggest challenge is that we cannot grow it really in the laboratory.
Scientists like to be able to grow organisms in the lab because they're far easier to study and manipulate. And there's another thing that makes studying cryptosporidium difficult.
There's no technology to study the genetics of the organism.
And because there's no way to grow cryptosporidium in the lab, there's no good way to create that technology. And you want to study the genetics of an organism since that can reveal its weaknesses. Despite the hurdles, Strepen decided he had to try to develop these tools.
We're trying this for 10 years, but we failed every time, quite miserably.
But then along came something called CRISPR. It's a system that can target DNA and either add or remove genetic sequences. It was originally found in bacteria, but it's been modified to work in a variety of species, now including the cryptosporidium parasite. Strepen says they still can't grow the parasite in the lab, but they can infect animals. So he says what they do is infect the animals, isolate the parasite from the animal's stool, use CRISPR to modify the parasite, and then infect other animals.
That way, using laboratory animals, we can propagate the infection, and therefore we can also propagate these organisms that we have changed.
And also use the infected animals to test drug or vaccine candidates. When he started out working on cryptosporidium, Strepen says he knew developing this genetic toolkit was a high-risk project, but it was also high reward. And everyone seems to agree these days that it's crucial for researchers to take on risky projects if they're to make important advances.
But while you're doing that, it's quite uncomfortable position to be in, right? Because so I woke up some nights and I thought, well, these poor kids who work with me in the lab, I bring them out onto this Hail Mary project and I risk their career. So it's really very gratifying to see that it worked, and that we could make some real progress and make a real contribution.
The new work appears in the journal Nature. Joe Palca, NPR News.
It's All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Richard Hake. Stay tuned. Coming up at 8 tonight, it's the storytelling series The Moth. Tonight's slow service at a deli counter leads to an angry and regrettable outburst. And a social worker tries to take a teenage client out for ice cream in the wrong neighborhood. You can hear those stories and others tonight at 8 o'clock on 93.9 FM. And you can tune in to On Point. That will be on AM 820. Mostly cloudy with a chance of showers and thunderstorms tonight. Less humid with lows in the mid-60s.
Central Park has statues of Mother Goose, Alice in Wonderland, and Shakespeare's Juliet. But did you know there are no statues of real women? Out of the park's 22 statues of historical figures, all are men. On the next Brian Lehrer Show, we'll go inside the campaign to correct this imbalance. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
WNYC receives support from LegalZoom, supporting small business owners for over 10 years, with services including business formations and corporate filings, plus independent professionals providing contract review and tax advice. Legal help is at LegalZoom.com.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Robert Siegel. Today, for the last time, toy soldiers, opened the doors of a New York City icon.
Are you ready to do it one more time? Guys, come on in. Welcome to FAO.
People young and old streamed into FAO Schwarz, a store very often referred to as FAO Schwarz. It's closing its doors today after almost 30 years in its current location on New York's Fifth Avenue. Rising rents are to blame. NPR's Hansi Lo Wang spoke to some of its last visitors.
They came from as far as California, Denmark, and even Thailand.
FAO Schwarz actually has been one of the places I've always wanted to see since I was a kid. Quite sad that it's closing the first day we come here, but at least we get a chance to see it.
45-year-old Scott Stuffelbeam of Bangkok flew into New York last night, and he made the toy store his first stop on his vacation with his wife and 15-year-old daughter, Alyssa. Is he more excited than you are to go in?
A lot more excited. I never saw a toy store this big. It looks pretty exciting.
If you've never been inside FAO Schwarz, you've probably seen it in the movies, like the 1988 film Big with Tom Hanks. He ends up dancing on a giant foot piano in the toy store. On its last day on Fifth Avenue, the big piano had plenty of eager players. There's a line of parents here holding up their phones, taking pictures of children jumping on the piano. This is the kind of toy store where you can bring home a life-size plush pony for about $950. Hello Kitty bags and doll houses were marked for clearance. Still, some visitors came more for the memories than sales.
Years ago, they had a fabulous electric train. I mean, really beautiful setups. It was just a thrill to go through and then to relive it with your children.
George Wiebekin lived in New York for a few years before moving to France. He came out of the store today with a bag full of candy for a friend.
And I'm sorry to see it closing. I've had many, many happy times here with my own children. But things move on.
10-year-old Tulsi Parikh of Houston left the store empty-handed.
I didn't buy anything. I like some of the stuff, but it was pretty pricey, so yeah.
Those prices usually can't beat the deals you can find online. That's where Tulsi's mother, Ummi, usually shops. But she says,
this is more fun. This is where you get to touch and feel everything. The little magic trick and the plane, and can't do that anywhere else.
Toy lovers, though, won't have to mourn forever. The store's owner, Toys R Us, says FAO Schwarz will reopen in a new location in Manhattan with cheaper rent and enough space for the giant foot piano. Hansi Luong, NPR News, New York.
Next week marks 35 years since the death of the Soviet Union's most popular singer-songwriter. Soviet citizens loved him because he sang about their lives and frustrations. But as NPR's Corey Flintoff explains, the Soviet establishment gave him no recognition at all.
The entrance to NPR's office in Moscow is off a side street called Bolshoi Karyetny, or Big Carriage Lane. Sounds quaint now, but this used to be a rough neighborhood with families packed into communal apartments and delinquent kids prowling the alleyways. Vladimir Vysotsky spent a few years of his youth here, and he remembered the place in a popular song. Where are my 17 years, he sings, on Big Carriage Lane. Where are my 17 troubles, on Big Carriage Lane. And where's your black pistol, on Big Carriage Lane. There's a small plaque on the wall of the apartment house where Vysotsky lived. I know this because one evening a slightly drunk neighbor insisted that I pause there for a moment to contemplate the singer and his fate. Vladimir Vysotsky was regarded with suspicion by the Soviet authorities, and during his short lifetime, he was never recorded on any of the state-owned record labels. Yet millions of people knew his music, mostly through bootleg cassette tapes of his few concerts.
Copies of the cassettes would be made and they would be passed around. Everyone knew about him. Most people had his recordings.
That's Olga Fedina, the author of a book on popular culture called What Every Russian Knows and You Don't. She says Vysotsky wasn't really a juvenile delinquent, but he knew those dead-end kids and could inhabit their lives through his songs. His knack for impersonating characters got him a job in Moscow's avant-garde Tagansky Theater, where he quickly began playing leading roles, Hamlet and Galileo. He wrote songs obsessively, by his own count, more than 600. Growing up just after World War II, Vysotsky wrote many songs about soldiers, like this one, called He Didn't Come Back.
Почему все не так? Вроде все как всегда. Тоже небо опять голубое.
It's sung in the voice of a soldier who's lost his best friend in a battle. Olga Fedina says Vysotsky got the details so right that many veterans thought he had to be one of them.
And he got a lot of letters from the veterans who would write into him saying, you must be that very Volodya with whom I shared the train in 1943. But of course, he was much too young for that.
Wysotsky had a comic knack for observing his contemporaries, too, like this song called Dialogue in Front of the TV. He plays both members of an empty-headed couple as they squabble in front of what Russians today call the zombie box. Wysotsky knew about marital quarrels. He went through 2 marriages before he met Marina Vladi, a beautiful French actress of Russian descent. But Wysotsky was already well along on his slide into alcoholism and drug abuse, the 2 things that would destroy him at the age of 42. He knew what he was doing, though he couldn't stop it. In this song called Capricious Horses, he imagines himself as the driver of a Russian Troika, a wild 3-horse team pulling a sleigh.
Вдоль обрыва, понад пропастью, по самому.
On the one hand, with his whip, he is making his horses to go faster. But on the other hand, he's begging them to go a little bit slower. So this was the resume of his late life.
By the summer of 1980, Wysotsky's life was ebbing away. That was the summer that Moscow hosted the Olympic Games, an event that the United States and many other nations boycotted because of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. Olga Fedina says there was no official notice of Wysotsky's death, just a note on the door of the Tagansky Theater, canceling the performance of Hamlet, Wysotsky's leading role.
But rumors traveled very fast in those days, and tens of thousands of people came out of their houses to pay their respect.
Some say that attendance at the Olympic Games fell sharply that day as people mourned the man they thought of as their voice. Corey Flintoff, NPR News, Moscow.
Который раз лечу Москва-Одесса, опять не выпускают самолет.
This program is brought to you in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Support for NPR comes from member stations and from the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR be the model for high-quality journalism in the 21st century. The law firm Cooley LLP, with offices in the U.S., Europe, and China, Cooley advises entrepreneurs, investors, financial institutions, and established companies around the world where innovation meets the law. And Farmers Insurance, out to educate everybody about common insurance gaps that can be costly so that no one falls victim to them again. Farmers Insurance, know the gaps. Learn more at farmers.com/inner circle.
I'm Stephen Dubner. On the latest Freakonomics Radio, there's a certain activity we spend a lot of time on, but which economists have traditionally ignored. Now, what could that be?
Sleep.
Sleep?
Sleep.
Sleep.
One area that's been overlooked is sleep.
That's really an important fact. What accounts for that?
The first of a 2-part episode on the economics of sleep. That's next time on Freakonomics Radio. Hear this and all our Freakonomics Radio podcasts at Freakonomics.com.
This is WNYC, AM and FM. Good evening. I'm Lance Lucky. I hope you'll stay tuned to the Moth Storytelling Series next on 93.9 FM. Slow service at a deli counter leads to an angry and regrettable outburst. That story and others on the Moth. And On Point is on AM 820, wondering whether China's stock market meltdown is a bubble correction or a sign of something more serious. It's been 1 year since the death of Eric Garner on Staten Island, and this Friday, WNYC will take an in-depth look at how that moment and its aftermath shaped the national debate on race and policing. We want to hear from you. What does the name Eric Garner mean to you? How have you or your community been affected by his death? Let us know by calling 855-8-MY-WNYC. We may play your comments on the air.